Welcome to You and Your Pets. My name is Dr. Ernest Rogers. I'm a veterinarian at the Maplewood Animal Hospital. And tonight we're going to be talking about grief and bereavement. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble saying that. But I've had several issues with pet loss and client grief and bereavement. And I would really like to discuss this subject. And tonight we have Ms. Alissa Gilmartin, who works with the Red Bank Animal Hospital and does grief and bereavement seminars for the clients and for the veterinarians and the technicians and anyone else involved in the euthanasia or the bereavement process.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming up. I know you had a long drive. I think grief and bereavement really starts before the animal passes on. It really starts with the human-animal bond. And so can we discuss that for a couple of seconds before we move on to your qualifications? Because I think that's really the big point right here.
Absolutely. The bond between the pet and the human is huge. I have a lot of clients ask me why are they grieving more for their dog instead of their mother or grandmother or sister. And it's because the bond is completely different. The pet gives unconditional love.
They're always around.
Always, and you're responsible for them. You're with them 24/7, and you have to do everything for them. And that is why the bond is so important and why they have a hard time when they do lose them.
And we as humans feel a need for companionship. We get unconditional love or unconditional attention from our animals. You can come home after a night of drinking and they don't judge you.
Yep.
So that's always the nice thing about animals. You can be upset and you can come in and they will give you your space, but they will also be close enough for you to talk to them.
Because they understand.
They have a sense.
They want to help and do whatever they can to make us feel better.
And
so, absolutely.
And so we get really tied to them. And then, no matter who you are, no matter how many pets you've had, it doesn't matter. Our pets don't last as long as we do in 99.9% of the cases. Unfortunately, we have our pets for anywhere from, I think the longest living pet I had to treat was a dog that was 21 years old.
Wow.
That's very unusual. And I've lost most of my pets between 15 and 17 years of age, usually at 16. So it becomes a real issue. So tell me, you're a bereavement counselor, so how did you get into this? What's your background and how did you come to do this?
I started with Red Bank in 2002. I started in pharmacy. I've been doing that for over 20 years. And after a while, I've worked in a few departments. They needed someone to take care of the aftercare department, and they asked me to do that. So basically, I take care of the animals afterwards, make sure that the owner's requests and everything is done properly. I call them when the ashes are back, and counseling is a huge part because a lot of the people just don't understand why they're feeling those feelings. So I became certified in bereavement in 2008.
And what does that mean?
There's an organization called the APLB.
American?
It's Pet Loss and Bereavement,
Okay.
the association. And Dr. Seif is the founder. We actually just had our conference 2 weeks ago in Atlantic City, and it's a program every 2 years. So as long as you complete it, you read the book, you take the test, you become certified, which is all good. But I think with the experience, that is how you become a better counselor.
Right.
So every time I help someone, I do it in his honor. He passed away in 2009.
And this is your pet?
This is Simba, yes.
Simba.
So he's with me, but just in a different form.
Right.
And he was an amazing dog. He taught me so much. And here's another picture of him. He taught me how to love large animals because I was attacked when I was younger by 2 large dogs. So I was very afraid. And then people are saying, well, you work in a vet's office. How does that work? Because he told me, in his own little way, it's okay. And not all big dogs are bad.
Right. And that's very important to understand. And I can see that your emotions are coming up when you talk about Simba. And I've had, I don't know how many dogs in my years, and I always have a little bit of emotion for each one when I think about it. So when do you enter the grieving process? I mean, obviously, the animal starts getting sick, and we recognize that it's a cancer, it's a non-treatable disease of some form. When do you enter the bereavement process? Is it when we know that we're heading for palliative care, or is it after the animal has been euthanized?
I am in all stages. I love it when the owners call or the doctors let them know about my services, about the anticipatory grief, which is when they're given an illness and they don't know when, but the pet will pass away soon of this illness. And that way we can make a plan. We can do a bucket list. We can prepare. And sometimes it's when the actual euthanasia is going to be performed. They'll ask me to stay with them, and I do. Sometimes it's afterwards. They hear about our group, they come, they get counseling. So it's all different stages. It's not a particular one.
Right. And so, excuse me, so you have your pet lost, you have your pet bereavement. There's palliative care that I do quite a bit. And my goal in palliative care is to make sure that there's a good quality of life. But at some point that comes to an end.
Yes.
As a veterinarian, every time I have to euthanize an animal, it becomes difficult for me. So I'm sure your veterinarians and your veterinary technicians also have problems. We're talking about clients, but we're also talking about the professionals who also have problems. And I know, having done a lot of human-animal bond work, that in shelters where they're euthanizing tens of dogs, and cats, we have a real problem there. So tell me, how is it different when you interact with a professional, a veterinarian, a technician, or is it basically the same issues in a different way?
Well, we do offer compassion fatigue seminars. We have someone coming in.
Can you explain what compassion fatigue is first?
Absolutely. Compassion fatigue, another example would be burnout, and that's what happens with nurses and doctors. In our field, compassion fatigue is when you just give so much of yourself and you wind up not having enough for yourself. And there's different stages in that as well, but it's good. I always like to have a buddy system. If there are cases that are really extreme, bounce it off of one another. Talk about it, get it out. My door is always open. I don't mind talking to anyone, because sometimes there's cases where their hands are tied and they can't do anything.
Right.
You know, especially when religion comes up. Because if they don't believe in CPR and the poor animal has to suffer and they don't believe in euthanizing the pet, then the technicians and the doctors, they're stuck. They can't do anything.
Right.
Because everything has to be approved by the owner.
Right. And what's interesting, you bring that up, I had an animal that got hit by a car, and it belonged to a homeless person, and the homeless person was brought in by a priest, and I was euthanizing the animal, and I said, well, you'll see him when you go to heaven, and the priest said, no, you won't. And we sort of got into it there, but I think he realized it for the sake of the person who was there, that was a good acceptance, not maybe what he would accept, but acceptance for the person. And moving on is part of what we do. So in the bereavement process, we always talk about stages. And so do you find that that's the case? Do you find there are stages for the clients? And just briefly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just briefly, how would you classify these different stages of bereavement?
There's many stages. You know, you have the bargaining, you have the denial, you have the depression. There's so many, but they never go in order because everyone is different, so they're going to grieve differently. Sometimes I have people that are stuck in the anger mode, and we just have to try to get them out of that because it's not doing them any good, and I know their pet wouldn't want them to be like this forever.
They're decompensating, essentially.
Yeah.
And so when you have people and they come into you, what is your role in helping them move forward? And we talk about initially Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her 9 stages or 5 stages of grieving, and it's been shown that they aren't quite that fixed and staged. But what is your role when someone comes to you and I just lost my pet, I'm not sure what I'm doing, I'm confused, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I don't believe it. And how do you interact with them?
Well, there's many ways I can. Some people don't like group settings, and we have the groups twice a month, every other week on Wednesday evenings. Some people like the one-on-one. Some people want to be on the phone. Some people want to do email. So it's whatever they decide how they want to go forth. I do give them a lot of homework. I give them a lot of articles to read. And the biggest compliment is when people read them, they say, I feel like these were written for me. And that was the goal. The other goal when they come to the groups is that they're validated and they're not alone. So I'm going to have a person come in where they're completely lost, and by the time they leave, there's like relief because they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So there's many things. Writing, journaling is very, very important as well. Some people will tell me I can't do that, and I'll ask them why. Because it's more final, it's on paper.
Right.
So there's a lot of, a lot of things that I can recommend. Hugs are important. I ask them first, but they feel good, especially if you're dealing with grandparents or parents.
Right.
And they're trying to be strong for the child.
Right.
So what can the child do for them? Give them a hug.
Right.
Because you're helping both.
And so this takes place either in a private setting like an office or a room, or it takes place in a group facility.
Yes.
And about how many people would you have in a group?
It all varies. I'll have sometimes maybe 2 new people, up to 20, 24 new people. I also have a few people that come back because they've done their grieving, but they want to help and pay it forward. So they show that there's a light at the end of the tunnel to newcomers.
Right.
They don't come all the time, but they just like to help. And children are the best when I have them in the group because they're so innocent and they tell it the way it is. And it really makes the older adults open up a lot more too.
And speaking about this, we have a little over a minute left, but in speaking about this, I know from my previous education that children grieve differently than adults. And so do you deal with the children? You say you have them in. Mm-hmm. Children under a certain age, I think it's 5, no longer see the permanence of death. And do you have to deal with all those different ages?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I tell the parent is to let the school know. Tell the teachers their pet just passed and they might have a hard time coming into class. And just validating. We have coloring books. We just have so many different things for the different age groups. And it's just also letting them be a part of the decision and not keeping things from them. Because you'll be very surprised. Someone in their 30s or 40s are still remembering when they were a little kid.
And had to deal with their pet.
Parents didn't talk to them about it. So.
Yeah. And it is one of those things that no matter who you are or when you're around, your pet is very likely to be one of the first deaths that a child will have to deal with. It's important that we have good grieving.
Yes, and also to make them a part of it and not hide your feelings from them because you don't want them to, grow up where they have to be strong and, it's okay to cry and be sad.
Well, it looks like we're almost out of time for this segment. So I just want to thank our viewers for watching. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Thank you very much. We'll be back with you and your pets.
After 17 years working as a mason, Mike was laid off. I met him when he came into the library looking for help. He found a job opening, but the application was only online. Mike said he'd spent his entire life around tools, but had never used a computer. I showed him how, and he ended up applying for numerous jobs online. I saw Mike the other day. His new computer skills paid off. He's working again.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Welcome back to You and Your Pets. My name is Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital. Tonight we're talking about grieving and bereavement with Miss Alissa Gilmartin, who is a grieving and bereavement counselor with Red Bank Veterinary Hospital. And we're happy to have her. I know, again, she had a bit of a challenge getting here. And we'd like to progress from our first half where we were talking about normal bereavement, normal grieving, the human-animal bond, and move into certain aspects of grieving that can be difficult for people And one of the big aspects that I see, and you mentioned that you see it as well, is guilt. People saying, oh, I should have spent more money. I should have given him better food as a puppy. I should have given him his vaccines. A lot of these things are inconsequential for the animal, but describe what you find when people have problems grieving and they get stuck. What are the big issues there?
Well, the number one issue is guilt. And everyone does the woulda, shoulda, couldas. We're human, so we always have to find something that we did wrong, even if you did everything right. One of the exercises that I give my clients is to make a column of everything you did for your pet. And you're going to have like 10 pages. Then the other column is the things you didn't do, or if you reprimanded, you might have like 2 or 3 lines. And that's just something that they can reflect on.
Puts things into perspective.
Absolutely. And a lot of this you have to do because you have to play the head games. You have to make things okay in your head. When they go through these processes, I kind of call them zombies because they just don't know what to do. So that's why I try to make it a little bit more clear and help them out with that.
Make it more concrete.
Yeah.
I know a lot of times, and I've had this happen to me on a number of occasions, where an animal has come in either after being treated by me or to be treated by me, and they die. Yeah. And quite often, we as veterinarians get blamed for that. And you were saying that grieving and suicide is a big part of this process. That obviously, suicide, as I've always said, is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And unfortunately, it does occur. And is that something that can occur even with pet loss?
Absolutely. It's huge. But I don't treat for that. So they would definitely need professional help. The only thing I can do and that I've been advised to do is call 911 and just let them know what I've encountered, what I've heard, my feelings and things of that nature. But it's really hard. Sometimes I have clients that are able to come to one session. Sometimes they come, more than once. If I see someone stuck and they do need professional help or they're just not going anywhere, I'll recommend that.
So how many sessions would a typical person come to? 2 or 3? Is there a typical number?
I was trained to have them come twice, and that's it. But unfortunately, everyone's different, and they may need 3 or 4.
Right.
So I can't cut it off in that respect because this might be the only support system.
Right.
And that's another hard thing is if they don't have support at home. At least they know that there's a safe environment with people that understand.
Right. And one of the things we see as veterinarians is this type of almost pathological bereavement, if you can call it that. And one of the things from one of my past lives, I worked in a psychiatric hospital. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we were taught was, are you feeling like you're going to hurt yourself, or are you feeling like you're going to hurt someone else? Those 2 questions come back with answers. People who are seriously in problems, and this is more for the veterinarians, but also the family surrounding the people grieving. If you think you're going to hurt yourself, we need to get professional help.
Yes.
And those are the 2 questions that I've always remembered to ask people when I think we have a problem. Given all that, and we have pathological grieving, at what point do you suggest people will move on? You have 2 sessions, you go through your anger, you go through your acceptance, and then what do people typically look like when they're moving on from that?
I see them looking at new puppies and kittens. There's just something, it's like a light bulb that goes off, and it's like their aha moment, and they get it, which is very helpful. I also have them do a lot more writing. It's really big, especially, for instance, if the pet passed and they weren't there. I have them write a letter. What would you say if you were with your pet? And vice versa. Write a letter from him or her to the owner.
Right.
So, there's many different ways and many things I try to help them with, but everyone's different. I have people that can get a pet the next day. I have others that say, I can't do this, I'll never get another pet. But then in
2 weeks later, or 2 months,
in a month or 2, guess what I got?
Yeah,
so it's very exciting. it's nice to see that I make a difference.
Right. And so one thing that I find is when I'm going to euthanize a pet, and I'm jumping around here a little bit, but when I'm going to euthanize a pet, I always give the owners the option of being in the room or not being in the room. And the way we euthanize animals at Maplewood Animal Hospital is I give them a sedative or an anesthetic agent so that they go to sleep. They are completely asleep. They don't feel any pain. And then we give them the final injection. And some people want to stay.
Yes.
And it actually seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, people who stay and see those last moments, particularly when it's calm during an anesthesia, they seem to be better off when they walk out of the office. And people who either leave or don't even want to be around when the animal is being euthanized. They just take them and I'll...
They have a hard time. A lot of them have a lot of guilt that they didn't stay for their loved one. So when they're on the fence, I ask them, would you rather them be able to see you and feel you and sense you, or do you want them to be with someone who doesn't know them?
Right.
And the way we do it the same way. It's very quick, and they spend as much time as they want. We never rush them out.
Right.
And it's just a way for them to be able to, get through it.
Right.
But there's never closure. There's no way of going, around the feelings. You have to go straight through them. And some of the ways are memorializing.
Right.
So
we have some things here that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them I've seen and some of them I haven't. But in general, once we have an animal that has been euthanized, I ask the owners if they want some fur, and we can take clippers and give them fur. Or we can take their collar and give them their collar.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, there are other things we can do. We then move on to something like cremation. And some owners want their ashes back, as you did. And I think since I've been in New Jersey, all my dogs have been cremated and are with me. Beyond that, we cannot get the cremation, and I tell them that the ashes will be spread on a field of remembrance at the crematorium. But there are other ways to memorialize your animals, and so we can maybe go through some of those. And you showed us one with the ashes and the, it's not really an urn, it's more of a box, if you want to hold that up again.
It's a nice little urn where you're able to put their picture inside.
And some of them actually come with a little name tag on them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's so many out there. And if an owner is not sure, they can always go on the websites and just Google cat urn or dog urn, and there's so many choices and so many things you can do.
Right.
We offer clay and ink paw prints. Another great thing, and this is called Hot Paws. So it's a little hard to see because it's clear.
Maybe I can hold it up.
But what they do is you make the impression, and we send it to Hot Sand, which is in Asbury Park, and then they put it in the fire and they make this glass impression of the paw.
And so this will stay with you
Mm-hmm.
and keep you happy, because it's always nice to have.
And the great thing is they can do this when they're alive also. So it's not so much, afterwards.
Right, right. And part of the job of a veterinarian is to ensure that they have these options.
Yes.
Sometimes it's very difficult. The owners are grieving so badly that they really don't have an opportunity to express that, and then the dog is gone. So,
And
or the cat is done.
What's really big also is doing a viewing. We have a lot of those. We have viewings at Red Bank, but they can also go to our crematorium and actually watch the process and have the viewing and, see as much as they want to see and wait for the ashes.
Right. Unfortunately, Maplewood Animal Hospital is not quite as big as Red Bank, and so we don't have viewings, but the company we use for our crematorium will have viewings if they so desire. Unfortunately, it's in Long Island, so they have a bit of a ways to go.
Yes.
But what else? We talk about how animals can pass and what we can do for them, and this is another.
This is a great idea that I love. You can put your pet and then have little items inside. You could have their tennis ball, you could have their collar, There's also another little one where it looks like a painting can, and it's a lady that's local. It's called Frutal, and she does many things. It's great. She loves to give back and, to help out. Another big thing is books and reading. There's just so much you can learn, and there's so much out there.
And so we have several different books here.
We have Cat and Dog Heaven. And the best part is these are for children, but also they help the adults. So I've had, a client where she would read it every single night. And when she knew she was going to come back, she gave it back to me because we let them spend as much time as they need with them. And it really helped her out a lot. This one also tells about the cremation process to a child. So there's just so much out there. I mean, it's so hard to pinpoint, what to do.
Right.
We also have this thing called a living urn, and you can actually, human or animal, you just pick out a tree and you put the ashes inside. They tell you all the different steps.
And that looks like as if it's gems that they can make with the human or animal ashes.
Yeah, it's really neat. Some people have made diamonds with the ashes. Some people get tattoos of their loved ones.
Right.
It really is up to the person and what they want to do. Collages are huge, and it's a great way to memorialize. And also, sometimes if they do something to help others, they're going to help themselves, like have a clothing drive for like towels or sheets and food, and then they can donate it to the SPCA in their pet's honor.
Right.
So there's a lot.
And there's a lot for us to do as veterinarians. I just want to mention this, that we have to be there to support our clients. It's going to take us an extra couple of minutes, but it's well worth supporting the people who have made your life so full, as well as the animals that have made us so happy. And I know I've lost several animals, and it's devastating. I've cried like no one would believe, simply because I lost my animals. But we're down to about 30 seconds now. So do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I'm just very happy to get this out there. I can be reached at any time.
Through Red Bank?
Through Red Bank, our number is 732-747-3636. The meetings, anyone can come. You don't have to be a client.
Okay.
And counseling, if you need help, I'm there. So.
And I also want to mention that if any of our viewers have any questions about either this show or any other show, feel free to contact me at maplewoodAH@comcast.net. And I'm afraid, as interesting as this is, we've run out of time again. We're done. But I'd like to thank our viewers for watching. This is Dr. Ernest Rogers, Maplewood Animal Hospital.
And Alissa Gilmartin at Red Bank Veterinary Hospital. Thank you.